And joining us on breakfast is a financial analyst, Suraj Oyewale. Good morning and thanks for joining us.
Good morning. It's good to be here this morning.
Indeed. Thank you.
And now we're talking about another bailout. Where do you stand with this? Of course, the states have promised to give us an account of how they used the first bailout funds. But what's your take on all of this bailout issue?
Okay, I mean, if you want to look at it holistically now, bailout is just a form of financial assistance given to an entity, private or public, I mean, companies or government. In this case, we are talking about government. I think it's a welcome development, and I've had the opportunity to look at the conditions spelled out by the federal government this time around, and I think it's a welcome development. If you look at the first one that was given to them some time ago, they weren't, I mean, other than the fact that the money should be used to settle the areas of salaries, there weren't, I mean, conditionalities like you are going to have this time around. So if you look at it critically, I think it's a good development this time around.
Well, is this the first time we're having the issues, or we have a stipulated codes when it comes to fiscal responsibility in Nigeria?
I mean, the challenge is not, it's one thing to have all these things on paper. I mean, it's another thing for the parties to carry them out. I mean, like everybody knows. So I would say this time around, they look quite serious. I mean, everybody looks quite serious. The governors appear. I mean, I was reading in the paper some days ago where they said they are ready to go by the rules, I mean, by the procedures set down before these things are given to them. So I think this time around, from what I've seen, I think it should be a lot different from what we've had in the past.
Would you like to see would you like to see some monitoring evaluation mechanism in place? Because we'll probably will go through some of these conditions later on to look at them one after the other. But would you like to see some kind of evaluation monitoring mechanism in place to determine this?
Yeah, I understand there's going to be an independent body to follow through the implementation of these. So that's the mechanism in place itself. I mean, how far have we gone in this? Okay, the first one they said they're going to get the money. Then before you have access to subsequent funding, then it's going to be subject to what you've done with what you received. I mean, what you've initially received. So I believe that's a mechanism already.
Okay, at this point, let's bring in Professor of Economics, Ken Ife, who's joining us from Abuja studios. Good morning to you, and thanks for joining us on TVC Breakfast. Well, again, we're talking about
good morning, and thank you very much.
Yes, we're talking about another bailout fund for the states after the one that, happened barely 8 months or so ago. What's your take on this? Many people feel that federal government is just spoon-feeding the states.
I don't think it's true. It's very important development. In fact, very, very critical development in our macroeconomic management. First of all is that we have to cultivate the states, because states and federal government are equal actors on the economy. They have concurrent jurisdiction. And it's very important. If you look at Buhari's statement when he was being sworn in, he said that they cannot stand and watch the developments in the states. It wasn't obvious how he was going to do it, because the constitution protects the states. But he is actually doing it in a way nobody has ever thought. Now you have governance conditions that are being imposed, and states are now required to deliver a plan called the Fiscal Sustainability Plan. And that involves more transparency, more accountability. For example, they have to publish their financial statements. And it has to come through an international standard which is going to be implemented, international financial standard which is going to be implemented. And also a software that will be developed and implemented by the states. Now you've got to begin to take all this in against the background that it has always been very difficult to control governors. But now the law, starting from Fiscal Responsibility Act, which they are implementing, and which is their condition for them to access bonds and external debts. So they're all coming together in a very, very creative way. You can also see how the budget has to come in. In the last meeting of the NEC, they all signed up to minimum of 30% of their budget going to the capital expenditure. And also you have the BVN is coming in, payroll management is coming in, publishing. All of those governance conditions are to rein in corruption and then make sure that you lay a solid foundation for the states to grow as strong economic centers. Look at America, for example, 50 states, but look at California alone has the economy greater than the whole of sub-Saharan Africa. So America was not built on federal government in America doing this, doing that. They focus on where their strength is. Defense, security, all of that area. Why the independent states take off on the economic management of the states. So that's what has to happen to Nigeria. And I'm happy that it is beginning to creep in a way we never thought it was going to happen.
But are you concerned then, you know, with the ICPC report jointly done by the Labour, that the last bailout was not actually used for what it was meant to, you know, for, which was to, you know, to pay outstanding salaries. The reports were, and revelations were actually really damning, where you have states, you know, collecting, you know, like Imo, for example, collecting 26 billion naira only to put in 2 different accounts and divert elsewhere. Are you concerned about, according to the ICPC and the Labour?
Of course, I'm very concerned about any act of impropriety. But, yeah, there's no doubt about that. That's why you have a stronger order of governance, which is going to be expressed in the agreement they are going to sign. And then you can, you know, legislate on that if need be. But the fact of the matter is that we cannot take away the necessity to strengthen, to rein in anti-corruption measures at the state level, and to bring them in closer to the federal government so that they can work together as actors in the economy. That is very, very important. You will never stop, you know, you will try and minimize corruption, but you can't stamp it out completely. So what happens is that the government does what it has to do, and the corruption agencies will move in to do what verification and all this that they need to do. Everybody have to do their own work. But you cannot say because one finger has you know, picked up oil, then necessarily has to spread to the rest of them. So there are 2 different angles. So I don't think I would prejudice the need for this federal government to carry on with what it is doing to bail out the states, but give them a far more solid foundation.
Okay, let's
look at again. There is IGR. They need to.
We'll come back to that. We'll come back to that. That's a very big topic, and we really need to deal with that. So, but before now, many of the state governors have tried to justify the reasons why their state remain insolvent. Let's play back this report.
Serious worry to the governors is the dwindling federal allocation over the past few months, which has left them in dire economic circumstances, with most state governments unable to pay their workers for months at a stretch. And by they had arrived at a 3-pronged solution to their problems, which they need the federal government to endorse.
From short term, we are looking at situation whereby our own funds that are hanging since 2005, line from the Obasanjo exit of Paris Club, some of the money that were not paid, so the state are having their difficulties. So if the state can get 1 or 2 things from there, we'll get relief. And also the loan restructured and ECA and the bailout loan that we start paying, we are looking for moratorium.
Under the last president, it would be impossible for us to approach Abuja to give us support because we have personal challenges. We'll be given lectures on fiscal responsibility and all those kind of stuff, even though the wastage was more here than any other place at that time. You know, but we have a president who recognized that he is not just president of the federal government, he is the president of the federation, of which the states are part.
The medium-term solution, they believe, is to review the revenue sharing formula with a higher percentage given to states, and they want a revenue commission free of federal government control to carry this out. When confronted with the fact that it was the decision of governors in the past in terms of saving that has created the present realities, they still lay the blame squarely at the foot of the central government.
The issue is that we're only taking 26%, and federal government is taking, then federal government taking 52%. So what have they done with the 52% that they can now serve Nigeria?
The governors have conflicting views on the issue of payment of salaries, but are in agreement that the federal government must intervene to ensure a permanent improvement in the fortunes of states.
I have chosen to accord wages the #1 priority. There was a time when things got so bad that for 3 months I stopped the overhead to the governor's office, the overhead to the deputy governor's office, the overhead to every commissioner, and overhead to the State House of Assembly, so that whatever we have was enough for us not to default.
All right, we still have Professor Ken Ife in Abuja, and of course, Suraj Oyewale is here with us. But this question goes to Prof in Abuja. You were talking about the issue of the IGR, Internal Generated Revenue. And you know that some of the states cannot pay their salaries, and most of these states, they only get a little money from payee. When you pay salary, you get taxes. When you don't pay, there's no taxes. How do you, with this short period of time, do you think the states can generate sufficient, as it is, IGR?
No, there are more ways to generate money for the states other than just from salaries of workers, important as that may be. But also bear in mind that some of the critical demands on the states are money for projects. So the federal government is revising the bond issuance criteria to ensure that they can access money for capital projects. And of course, you know that the law prohibits even the federal government from borrowing externally for anything other than capital projects anyway. So you have all these two sources of funding to help them fund the project. But there is also, within this governance condition, a restriction on capital expenditure. So they have to show that they are actively restricting capital recurrent expenditure in favor of capital expenditure. So that is very important development. Now, people can argue that there is impropriety in getting money for one purpose and applying it for other purposes. You can't get money for salaries and then use it for some other things. But the thing is that you need to have a tighter reign of conditions, which is now coming in with these 22 governance conditions called the Fiscal Sustainability Plan. And then upon that, you can take action. If they violate, then you call back the loan and they start deducting straight from source. So, I think the governors have to understand that there's no further Christmas in this circumstance.
Indeed. Okay, at this point, let me come to Suraj Oyewale in the studio. In that report that our correspondent, just gave to us, he talked about a need to review revenue sharing formula with more funds going to the states. Do you think that might be the way out of this, situation that seems to be never ending?
I don't agree with that. I'm a little bit disappointed with the governors when they were speaking on the show now. They don't appear to talk about their, IGR generating the monies internally. Everybody allocations to the states. I don't agree that's the way to go about it. There are a lot of opportunities this state can explore. To get further money.
IGR.
Exactly, not just taxes. You have solid minerals. At least each of the states in Nigeria has not
within
more than
a short term. Let's be realistic here. For a state who has not been cultivating that, how would it generate money from that just within this short period of time?
So what that means is that if we increase the allocation formula now, that way more goes to the state now. So it makes them to become laid back. Okay. So I think the bailout fund and the bailout fund that is actually to be disseminated to them, to be given to them, I think it's enough to solve it in the short term. Okay, then they can look at the other alternatives like developing the internal revenue generating capacity for medium to long term solution. So
this executive, the executive governors, they've been in place for like a year now. And do you see any plans, anything that looks like, yes, we have visionary men, at the helm of affairs at the state level, and they're ready to actually look in other directions for IGR rather than expecting these handouts from government every now and again?
They just have to, and if the citizens are aware themselves, if the voters are aware themselves, these are things they can use to evaluate the performance of the government. So it does. If any governor is not ready to do that, then it doesn't have a business being governor. So I don't believe it's not a matter of whether their own personality, whether they are disposed to it or not. They should be disposed to it. They should be disposed to getting things done, generating money internally as much as possible. And the populace as well, the voters should be able to call them to account on this. The next time, if you are not able to do this, then you should be out of the job. So all these things need to be considered when the citizens are making their own political choices as well. So I don't believe going to Abuja every month and asking for more funds and all of that is a solution. It's just a temporary solution that is being done now. Giving more monies to the states, I don't believe that's the way to go.
Okay, Prof. Let's go back to the issue of debt. If you're privy to this information, can you tell us about the debt ratio?
My line has cut.
Oh, we're having some connection problems with Professor. Okay, so let's we'll try and reconnect and we'll throw that question. But if you can really preview to the information on the debt ratio of the state, how much can they borrow to what their budget is.
It actually stands at somewhere around 110 billion right now for salaries alone.
Yeah, the ratio to what they can borrow based on what they have in their budget. And don't forget, according to from this information now, most of the states are owing banks, and there's tremor going on in the banking industry right now because some of these loans have now turned bad, or they are non-performing loans.
I'm quite familiar with the debt ratio that is in place at the moment, but I know a lot of them have debts. With various financial institutions, with even the government. There was a time like February or so that the money that went to, as a result of the deductions from source, the money that went to a state like Osun was just few millions of naira. And
you're talking about the FAC, the allocation?
Yeah, exactly.
But we are talking, okay, let's put that question to Professor Ife. The question on the ratio of debt, you just made mention of how much the federal government cannot just borrow from outside the country except for capital expenditure. What in this program now, how much can the state government borrow? What is their debt ceiling? What is the ratio of their debt ceiling based compared to their budget? How much can they borrow? And don't forget that in the past, they had quite a lot of non-performing loans to this bank, and the banks are in trouble. Can you help us out?
Yeah, within the Fiscal Responsibility Act, there is a ceiling that you cannot have more than 3% of the GDP on financing of your debt. So that's a limit. It's already put there. But there's also a benchmark of 40% of your external debt to GDP ratio, which applies, of course, to both the states and federal government. You can compute the GDP of every state and then aggregate for the states, for the federal government. So we have all those guidelines there. But the devil, of course, is in the details. First of all, they have to actually collect the debts and know how much they are owing. That's why we have a debt office that was set up, I think, around 2005, and is doing a great job, so monitoring the debt. So we now know what it is. But let me summarize by saying that what is happening now is divine intervention. Constitutionally, it's so difficult to rein in governors when you look at the Constitution. But the governance conditions that we have now, if they are faithfully implemented, would help the governors grow in economic strength, the states, and then where the federal government begins, because the federal government has to cultivate a good working relationship with the states before they will gradually begin to offload some of the responsibilities to the states. But if you don't have that sort of good relationship, it's going to be very difficult. And then the law has to creep in. Best practices have to creep in. Then things like building houses in the states by federal government, maintaining roads, some of those work can be remitted to the states, and they will make revenue, they will make profit from doing those, as well as delivering faster than federal government. But you got to federal government has to cultivate them and build best governance practices within the states to give them the confidence to actually remit more responsibility to the state before you begin to think of how that should reflect on revenue allocation. Everybody have their own share of the problem, but there is a big opportunity for the states to look at those 37, federal government to look at the 37 states as development centers that they can work with to help manage its own part of the balance sheet. So that is very important.
Professor Kenife, still remaining with you, isn't this where fiscal federalism comes in? There are experts and analysts who have said the root cause of the problems that we have now, where you have governors not able to pay salaries and all the other financial burdens that they have, actually, is rooted in the problem, well, lack of, true fiscal federalism. Is that the solution? Will that be the permanent, solution going forward?
I don't really agree to that. I don't really agree to that, because you need to demonstrate good faith. You need to demonstrate economic management competencies at state levels. You need to also show that you are transparent, that you are accountable, and there's so much that you can do between the states and federal government, before going to law to fundamentally change the way things order in the country. Because how can some states be abusing the resources and some are doing the good thing? If you look at the way, okay, some states employ twice more staff than other states. And the way they cope is different. Look at Kaduna, they got, I think, 2.4 billion. Out of it, 2.2 billion was to pay salaries. How can you maintain that level of staffing? But then, experience and good economic management would show how they would allow natural wastages to contract the expenditure side of the balance sheet. So these things will take their cost. So what I'm saying is this: there are still scope for improved governance, and of course they would reflect. That argument will not go away on revenue allocation and reallocation formula. It won't go away. It would be good if there should be more should go to states, yes, but the states have to demonstrate that they are actually doing all within their power to raise internal revenue. Look at the differences in the internal generated revenue. The Lagos state is getting 70% of the allocation from IGR. Some are not even getting up to 2%. They got to up the ante in the states. Some didn't even remit
at all. Okay.
Well, that's the challenge.
Okay, so let's go to the issue of this unity implementation of those who will monitor what is going on in the state. And I'd like to take you back to the projects that were cited and probably implemented during the MDGs, and some projects that were purportedly implemented with the Sure P monies. There are reports that will filter into Abuja and say this is what is going on back in the, say, Northeast, for instance. This is what is going on, and they take picture of some things that are going on. Probably do a documentary, but when you go to the hinterland, you realize these things are just paperwork. Nothing is really going down as they have made people to believe. How do you understand the workings of this particular program to ensure that what they say is happening is what is really happening in terms of capital projects?
Well, that comes to application of sanctions. When you have an arrangement like this one we have just been discussing, 22 governance conditions around fiscal sustainability plan, you have to give the first sanctions on violation. And then there's a certain arm of the government that deals with the audit and implementation of the sanctions. So the one doesn't defeat the other. The real need to do the things have to be recognized. There are people whose responsibility it is to do. EFCC has its own responsibility. You strengthen the institution by going to the law to plug the loopholes that make it difficult for them to succeed in litigation. ICPC has work to do in the public service. Then you strengthen the law to make them easy for them to enforce. If you need a special court to make sure you have speedy dispensation of justice, then so be it. You have to have a special court. But I think the key is how quickly can we plug the holes in the regulations and the law section of these institutions so that they can bite harder and deliver justice faster in a swifter way. I think that is the big gap there. So it doesn't detract from doing what needs to be done to build this economy. But then, get the other institutions, enable them to be able to do their own work. And that's not happening right now.
All right, Professor Ken Ife, thank you so much. It's been nice having your input on this issue. Thanks again, and we look forward to having you back again on TVC Breakfast. Let's come to our guests in the studio, Suraj Oyewale. Now, the federal government has agreed to apply what is called IPSAS, as the International Public Sector Accounting, standards. How much difference would this really make, in a situation where, well, not in my words, the perception out there is that the governors, the chief executives at the state level, they don't really have what it takes to drive the economy. They seem to be so focused on, collecting money to pay salaries, rather than providing that environment, for business to thrive, to attract both, FDI and, of course, local investors.
Okay, IPSA are just a set of financial, rules that guide public sector accounting, how money, disbursed and spent and accounted for, to make sure they are as close to, what obtains in the private sector as much as possible. I think it's a welcome development to have this embedded in the FSP, being introduced by the
conditions.
One of the conditions exactly. Being entrenched in the FSP, because this is going to make it more accountable. Make it more transparent and accountable, and as close as much as possible to how things work. The state governor doesn't have to have much knowledge of accounting or economics. Just having in place a set of experts in your finance ministry, and other agencies that that work with you on the other side of governance. So if you have a good commissioner of finance and if you have a good team in place, I think it should not be difficult to achieve this with the support of the federal government this time around, because this is the proposal that is coming from the federal government through the as one of the conditionalities in the FSP. So I think IPSA is something to cheer about, and I hope this will be implemented faithfully.
Because the buck stops at the executive table in any case. So do you think the present governors, they may not need knowledge of accounting, but do they have the willpower to be transparent in the accounting system?
This time around, looking at what they stand to lose by not doing it, I think they don't have option than just to do that. All of them came back from that meeting and said, "Oh, okay, we are ready to abide by the conditions we are giving, by the rules. Once you give us this money, and if you don't, the government says, if you don't agree to it, then if you don't, follow it, then we're going to have our money back. We're not going to give you." So I think that should be enough to make the government develop, the state governors develop the way to get this done.
Now, looking at IGR, many people have given the example of Lagos State, doing so much, in terms of, making money from taxes and all the rest of them. Of course, on the one hand, there are those who say, look, the population of Lagos alone, even if you were a dummy, you would make money, from Lagos State. But it is open knowledge. Many of these states do have, one natural resource or the other, but they're not tapping into it. Yeah,
it's not just. My background is taxation. I'm a tax accountant, and I deal with Lagos State quite a lot. Apart from the fact that Lagos is the economic hub of Nigeria, where things are happening, the state government, you have to give it to them. They've also be quite creative. It's not just enough for you to have. For you to have the pool, for you to have
or the market.
The market, that it's for you to be able to come up with creative ways of exploiting the opportunities in it. A number of other states also have this. Not as much as Lagos, but in varying degrees, they have these opportunities as well. Not only just taxes. Look at establishing industries. Okay, industry. When we were young, we used to, most of these states government used to have their own. In companies. Kwara State, paper industry, and all. Most of them are now being run a grant. They are not. None of them is. By the way, I understand that one of the conditions is that private enterprises, public state-owned enterprises are going to be privatized, which I think is fine, because it's obvious that this state government cannot. They can't manage them again. It's one of the conditions. Apart from that, then you talk about the solid minerals, and I said, at least each of the states in Nigeria has not less than 5 solid minerals. They are not exploiting. Of course, the benefit might not come in the short term, but these are things they have to look into. So it all boils down to proper thinking by these governments. If they're actually serious, it should not be quite difficult, irrespective of the conditions of your state. Talk about rivers. I was disappointed when I was looking at Akwa Ibom State, for example, the IGI they were generating. I was a little disappointed, to be honest, because this is a state that is home to oil companies. I mean, I guess it's because of the fact that they get the highest allocation from the federal government.
In addition to other interventions like NDDC and the rest of them.
The oil companies, they pay.
PAYE goes to the state government. PAYE goes to the, and some other levies go to the state government. Okay, so these are ways to generate money if well exploited. Okay, so all these things just need to be more creative. It shouldn't be so difficult. They can get people from the private sector, guys from PwC, KPMG, and all these companies that expert that can them revamp their tax function. And
do you think the private sector as it is now, based on what we have, maybe even the manufacturing, do you think they are willing to even partner with state government? So there's a lot of contraction going on in the industry. Do you think they are willing to do that?
It's tight, because if you look at it, there are some arrangements in which the oil companies, not just oil companies generally are not, the government are not able to fulfill their own part of the bargain. They are always complaining of money. I know some partnership between state government and the private sector, where the private, when the government are not able to fulfill their own part. So it might be a little bit difficult, but if you have a state that is serious, then it should not be difficult for them to work with the private sector to revamp things in their states.
It's not about being difficult. It's about the realities of the economic policies. Do you think it's friendly enough? That's the question, really.
Tough one there, but I think it's not something that cannot be surmounted. It's not something that cannot be unassailable. The environment is not friendly, true, but you don't see because of that you don't do anything.
All right, Suraj Oyewale talking to us on government's planned fresh bailout for the states. Well, we still don't know how many states will be getting it this time. The president himself did say the last time that 27 states could not pay salaries. Very sad commentary there. Thank you so much for being part of TVC Breakfast. Okay.